The moment my father showed up at my office building, tears streaming down his face, begging me to save the family business, I knew they'd finally realized what they'd lost. 28 years too late. He stood there in the lobby, in front of my colleagues, my boss, everyone I'd built a professional life with, and he said the words I'd waited my entire childhood to hear. I need you. I can't do this without you. But when I looked at this man who'd spent my entire life acting like I didn't exist, who'd chosen my brother over me at every single turn, who'd let me believe I was worthless, I felt nothing. And that's when he understood that the daughter he'd ignored for nearly 3 decades had become the only person who could save him. And she was about to let him fall. My name is Sarah. And this is the story of how my parents spent my entire life treating me like I was invisible while worshiping my older brother like he was a god. How they missed every important moment of my life because they were too busy attending his. How they told me I'd never amount to anything while funding every one of his failed ventures. And how, when their golden boy destroyed everything they'd built, they came crawling to the daughter they'd pretended didn't exist, and learned that some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. But you need to understand how deep this goes. Because this wasn't just about a wedding they missed or a graduation they skipped. This was a lifetime. A systematic, relentless pattern of erasure that started the day my brother Michael was born and never stopped. I was 4 when Michael came into the world. Old enough to remember what it was like before him, when I was my parents' whole universe. When my father would come home from his architecture firm and swing me around in the living room. When my mother would brush my hair and tell me stories. When I was seen and heard and loved. And then Michael arrived. And everything changed. At first, I thought it was just normal new baby attention. Of course, they had to focus on him. He was tiny and helpless and needed constant care. I understood that. I was a good big sister. I tried to help. But the attention never shifted back. Not when Michael was 1. Not when he was 2. Not when he was 5 or 10 or 15. My parents didn't just love Michael. They worshipped him. Every breath he took was a miracle. Every word he spoke was genius. Every drawing he made was fine art. Every tantrum he threw was justified because he was gifted and intense and special. I was just there. The spare. The backdrop. The daughter they'd had before they knew they could have a son. I learned early that my achievements didn't matter. When I brought home straight A's in elementary school, my mother would glance at the report card and say, "That's nice, honey," and then immediately turn to Michael and ask about his day in kindergarten, where he'd apparently learned to count to 20 and was clearly destined for mathematical greatness. When I won the school's spelling bee in 5th grade, my parents couldn't attend because Michael had a soccer game. He was 6. He spent the entire game picking dandelions. But they were there, cheering, taking photos, acting like he'd won the World Cup. I came home with my spelling bee trophy and set it on the kitchen counter. My mother moved it to make room for Michael's participation certificate from soccer. That's when I started to understand. Nothing I did would ever be enough to make them see me. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that they didn't just ignore me. They actively told me I was less than, less important, less valuable, less worth investing in. When I wanted to take piano lessons, my mother said they couldn't afford it. 6 months later, they bought Michael a drum set that cost 3 times as much because he'd expressed interest in music. When I asked if they'd help me with college applications, my father said I should probably look at community colleges because we need to be realistic about your abilities. When Michael was applying to colleges 4 years later, they hired a private consultant and toured a dozen campuses. When I graduated high school with a 4.0 GPA and a full scholarship to a good university, my mother's response was, "Well, at least you'll be able to support yourself." When Michael barely graduated with a 2.5 GPA, they threw him a party and called him a late bloomer who would find his path. I learned not to expect anything from them. Not attention, not pride, not love. I learned to be self-sufficient because I had no other choice. I put myself through college, Worked 2 jobs while maintaining my grades. Got my degree in business administration. Got a job at a consulting firm. Worked my way up through pure competence and determination. And my parents? They never asked about my job. Never asked about my life. Never visited my apartment. Never called just to see how I was doing. But they called when they needed something. Sarah, can you watch Michael this weekend? We're going to that conference. Sarah, can you lend Michael some money? He's between jobs again. Sarah, can you talk to Michael about being more responsible? He listens to you. No, he didn't. Michael didn't listen to anyone. Michael was 25 years old and had never held a job for more than 6 months. He'd been fired from a dozen positions for showing up late, talking back to managers, doing the bare minimum. My parents blamed everyone but him. Bad bosses. Toxic work environments. Bad luck. The economy. Never Michael's laziness. Never his entitlement. Never the fact that they'd raised him to believe the world owed him success, without effort. And I watched all of this from a distance, building my own life, succeeding despite them rather than because of them. I didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. I met David when I was 26. He was a project manager at a client company. Kind, grounded, came from a loving family that actually communicated and supported each other. Being around his family was revelation. I didn't know families could be like that. Warm. Present. Interested in each other's lives. We dated for a year. Got engaged. Started planning a small wedding. Nothing extravagant. Just us, close friends, family. I called my parents to tell them about the engagement. That's wonderful, Sarah, my mother said. What's his name again? David. You met him last Christmas. Did we? I'd brought David to Christmas dinner. We'd spent 3 hours there. My parents had talked to Michael the entire time and barely acknowledged David's presence. Yes, Mom, you did. Well, congratulations. Send us the details when you know them. That was it. No excitement. No questions about the proposal. No asking to see the ring. Just polite acknowledgement, like I'd told her I'd gotten a new car. I sent them a save-the-date card. 6 months in advance. Plenty of notice. I called 2 weeks before the wedding to confirm they were coming. Oh, Sarah, I meant to call you, my mother said. We can't make it. Michael's got this job interview that weekend. In another state. We're going with him for moral support. I was silent for a long moment. My wedding is on Saturday. The interview can't be another day. It's the only day they could meet with him. It's a really important opportunity. I'm sure you understand. I don't, actually. Sarah, don't be dramatic. You know how important this is for Michael. He needs us right now. And I don't. You're getting married. You'll be fine. You have David. Michael needs family support. I'm your daughter. And you're capable and independent. Michael needs us more. You've always been the strong one. I hung up before she could hear me cry. My parents didn't come to my wedding. They sent a card with a $100 check. The note said, "Congratulations. Sorry we couldn't be there. Hope you understand. Love, Mom and Dad." I cashed the check and donated it to charity. My wedding was beautiful, small and intimate. David's parents were there, his siblings, our friends, people who actually cared about us. And I danced with David's father during the father-daughter dance because mine couldn't be bothered to show up. After the wedding, I made a decision. I was done. Done trying to earn their love. Done being the responsible one who fixed Michael's messes. Done accepting scraps of attention while watching them pour everything into a son who gave them nothing in return. I stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped reaching out. They didn't notice for 3 months. And that's when I realized something was terribly wrong. When my mother finally called, not to ask how I was, but to ask why I'd been distant, I told her the truth. You didn't come to my wedding, Mom. You chose Michael's job interview over the most important day of my life. Why would I want to stay in contact with people who make me feel invisible? You're being very selfish, Sarah. Michael needed us. You were fine. I wasn't fine. I was hurt. I wanted my parents at my wedding. Well, you can't have everything. We did the best we could. No, you didn't. You did the best for Michael. I was an afterthought. That's not fair. It's completely fair. And I'm done pretending it doesn't matter. Don't call me unless you actually care about my life. Not because you need something. Not because you want me to fix Michael's latest crisis. Only call if you genuinely want a relationship with me. I hung up. They didn't call. For 2 years, I heard nothing. No birthdays. No holidays. No check-ins. Just silence. And honestly, I was happier. I built a life with David. Got promoted. Made director at my firm. Bought a house. Started actually enjoying my life without the constant background noise of their disappointment. I wish I could say that was the end. But things got worse. For them. See, while I was building my career and my life, Michael was destroying theirs. I heard this later, pieced together from extended family members who still talk to me. Michael had convinced my parents to invest in his business idea, a tech startup that was going to revolutionize something. The details were always vague. My father, who'd built a successful architecture firm over 30 years, liquidated assets to give Michael's startup capital. $200,000. Michael burned through it in 8 months. No product. No business. Just expenses. Expensive office space he didn't need. High salaries for friends he hired who did nothing. Business dinners that were just him taking people out on my parents' dime. When the money ran out, Michael asked for more. My parents remortgaged their house. Gave him another $100,000. That lasted 6 months. The business folded. Michael declared bankruptcy. And my parents were left with massive debt, a mortgaged house they'd owned outright, and a son who blamed them for not believing in him enough. My father's firm started struggling. He was distracted, stressed, made mistakes on projects, lost clients. Within a year, the firm was hemorrhaging money. My mother called me. First time in 2 years. Sarah, we need to talk to you about something important. What? Can you come to the house? This isn't a phone conversation. Something in her voice made me agree. I drove to my childhood home, pulled into the driveway, noticed the lawn hadn't been mowed. The paint was peeling. The house looked tired. My parents looked worse. Older, thinner, stressed in a way that had carved lines into their faces. Thank you for coming, my father said. We sat in the living room. The same room where I'd spent countless evenings being ignored while they focused on Michael. We need your help, my mother said. With what? The firm. Your father's business. It's failing. We're going to lose everything if we can't turn it around. I looked at my father, this man who'd told me to be realistic about my abilities, who'd skipped my spelling bee for Michael's soccer game, who'd missed my wedding. Why are you telling me this? Because you're good at business, my father said. You work in consulting. You understand these things. We need someone who can look at the books, figure out what's wrong, help us fix it. You want me to save your business? Yes. I let that sit for a moment. Where's Michael? They exchanged a look. Michael isn't. He's not in a position to help right now. Why not? He's dealing with some personal issues. The bankruptcy? My father sighed. Among other things. So let me get this straight. You spent my entire life investing everything in Michael. Ignored me. Missed my wedding. Haven't called me in 2 years. And now that your golden child has destroyed your financial security, you want me, the daughter you couldn't be bothered to acknowledge, to fix it. Sarah, please don't be like this, my mother said. We're family. Family shows up for weddings, Mom. Family calls on birthdays. Family actually gives a damn. You want me to save you? After everything? We made mistakes, my father said quietly. We know that. We focused too much on Michael. We took you for granted. But we're begging for your help. And that's when I saw it. The desperation. The fear. The realization that they'd bet everything on the wrong child. What happened next shocked everyone. I didn't help them. Not right away. I said I'd think about it. Went home. Talked to David. They don't deserve your help, he said. I know. But you're considering it anyway. I'm considering what it would mean. What I'd want in return. David looked at me carefully. This isn't just about business, is it?
No.
It's not. I spent 2 weeks thinking, planning, deciding exactly what I wanted. Then I called my father. I'll help you, but I have conditions. Anything. You don't even know what they are. Tell me. I want full access to the books. Complete financial transparency. I want decision-making authority on all business matters. And I want you to acknowledge, publicly and to the whole family, exactly what you did.
How you treated me.
How you ignored me. How you poured everything into Michael and took me for granted. Silence. That's what it costs for my help.
Truth.
Acknowledgement. And control. Sarah, that's asking a lot. You're asking me to save everything you built. I'm asking you to admit what you destroyed. Seems fair. Another long pause. Okay. Yes. We'll do it. I went in the next week. Reviewed the books. The situation was worse than they'd described. The firm was 6 months from total collapse. Debt from the remortgages. Unpaid contractors. Lost clients. A reputation damaged by missed deadlines and poor work. But it was salvageable. Barely. I created a plan. Restructuring. Cost cuts. Client outreach. A complete operational overhaul. And I implemented it without mercy. I fired half the staff, the ones who weren't performing. I renegotiated contracts. I personally met with former clients and pitched for their business back. I worked 16-hour days rebuilding what my father had let crumble. Within 3 months, the firm stabilized. Within 6 months, it was profitable again. Within a year, it was thriving. My father watched all of this happen. Watched me do in 12 months what he couldn't do in 30 years. And slowly, painfully, he started to understand what he'd lost. I didn't gloat, didn't rub it in. I just worked, proved my value through undeniable results. And then I called in the second part of our agreement. My parents were hosting a family gathering. Extended family. Cousins, aunts, uncles. The people who'd watched them favor Michael my entire life. I showed up, asked for everyone's attention. I want to say something, and I want my parents to confirm it. Everyone turned. My mother looked nervous.
My father looked resigned.
For my entire life, I was invisible in this family. My parents attended every one of Michael's events and missed every one of mine. They funded his education and told me to be realistic about my abilities. They skipped my wedding for his job interview. They gave him hundreds of thousands of dollars while telling me I should be self-sufficient. And when Michael destroyed their finances, they came to me, the daughter they'd ignored, to save them. The room was silent. I want my parents to acknowledge this. Out loud. In front of everyone. My mother's eyes filled with tears. My father stood up. It's true, he said, his voice rough. Everything Sarah said is true. We failed her. We poured everything into Michael because we thought he needed us more. We took Sarah for granted because she was capable and independent. And we were wrong. Devastatingly wrong. My mother spoke next. I missed my daughter's childhood because I was too focused on my son. I missed her wedding. I missed years of her life. And when we needed help, she saved us despite having every reason to refuse. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry. I looked at them. These people who'd shaped my entire childhood by their absence. I don't forgive you, I said calmly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I acknowledge your apology. And I want everyone here to know what really happened. Not the version where you were great parents. The truth. I wish I could say that was the end. But the consequences kept unfolding. Within weeks, the extended family started treating my parents differently. People who'd always admired them now saw them clearly. The whispers started. The judgment. The knowledge that they'd neglected one child while ruining another. Michael, when he found out I'd saved the business, was furious. Showed up at my office demanding to know why I hadn't helped him instead. Your family, he said. You should have invested in my business. Your business failed because you're lazy and entitled. I'm not investing in that. Mom and Dad believed in me. Mom and Dad enabled you. There's a difference. And now they're paying for it. He tried to argue, tried to guilt me, tried every manipulation tactic he'd used successfully on our parents. I had security escort him out. I didn't see him again for months. And when I did, it was because he'd hit rock bottom, lost his apartment, was living with friends, had no job prospects because he'd burned every bridge.
He called me.
Asked for money.
No.
I'm your brother. You're a stranger who happens to share my DNA. You've never treated me like a sister. Why would I treat you like a brother? Please, Sarah. I have nowhere else to go. You have parents who sacrificed everything for you. Ask them. They don't have anything left. You know that.
Exactly.
They gave you everything, and you destroyed it. That's not my problem. I hung up. My parents tried to intervene. Asked me to help Michael. No. He's struggling. He's experiencing consequences. Let him. Sarah, please. You spent my entire life prioritizing him. You can keep doing that if you want, but leave me out of it. They realized then that they'd lost more than financial security. They'd lost both their children. One to incompetence and entitlement. One to justified anger and distance. The business I'd saved, I eventually bought it. Made my father an offer he couldn't refuse. Acquired controlling interest.
He works for me now.
Takes direction from the daughter he told to be realistic about her abilities. The irony isn't lost on either of us. My relationship with my parents is civil, professional. We talk about business. We don't talk about feelings. We don't pretend the past didn't happen. They've tried to repair things. Invited me to holidays. Sent birthday cards. Made efforts. But trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild. Especially when the breaking happened over 28 years. Michael is still struggling. Still blaming everyone but himself. Still waiting for the success he thinks he deserves without having to work for it. My parents still help him. Give him money they can't afford. Enable his delusions. Some patterns are too deep to break. But I'm free of it. Built a life that has nothing to do with their dysfunction. David and I are happy. I'm successful. I have friends who actually see me. A chosen family that celebrates me. And when my father shows up at my office sometimes, I see it in his eyes. The regret. The understanding of what he lost. He had a daughter who was brilliant and capable and would have loved him unconditionally if he'd just acknowledged her existence. Instead, he has an employee who tolerates him professionally and avoids him personally. That's the price of neglect, of favoritism, of taking someone for granted until it's too late. My parents ignored me my entire life, treated me like I was worth less than my brother, missed every milestone that mattered. And when their golden child destroyed everything, they came begging to the daughter they'd dismissed. I saved them, not because I forgave them, but because I wanted them to see exactly what they'd lost. I wanted them to work for the daughter they'd ignored, to watch her succeed, to understand that the child they'd written off was the one who actually mattered. Every day my father comes to work and takes direction from me is a reminder of his failure as a parent. Every holiday invitation I decline is a consequence of years of absence. Every achievement I have that they hear about secondhand is payback for all the moments they missed. I didn't destroy them. I let them destroy themselves. And then I made sure they survived just long enough to understand what they'd lost. That's not revenge. That's justice. And it's the only thing I had left to give them. My parents ignored me. They begged when everything fell. I saved them. But I'll never let them forget what it cost. Some people think family is about blood, about obligation, about forgiveness, no matter what. But family is about showing up, about being present, about making someone feel valued. My parents taught me what family isn't, and I built my own version of what it should be. They wanted the daughter they'd ignored to save them. I did. But the price was everything they'd spent my life withholding. Recognition.
Respect.
The admission that they were wrong. They can't take that back. Can't undo it.
Can't pretend it didn't happen. And neither can I.
My parents ignored me. I made sure they'd remember me forever. Not as the daughter who forgave, but as the one who saved them and never let them forget why they needed saving in the first place.